So we're here once again at Emirates Stadium for Arsenal versus Juventus in the Women's Champions League tonight, match day 4. And given the way match day 1 went for Arsenal, where they lost 5-2 away at Bayern Munich, the fact that they have the chance to qualify this evening is probably a pretty good result on the back of that. And actually, this is a Champions League group stage campaign that so far has been defined by 2 away games. Because the standings are done on head-to-head, it has to be said it's quite unlikely that Arsenal are going to overturn the 5-2 defeat that they suffered to Bayern Munich on match day 1. So their chances of finishing top of the group are quite slim. But at the same time, last week Arsenal went to Italy, they beat Juventus 4-0, and that's really put them in a very, very strong position because of the head-to-head situation. Juventus is going to have to come and win here and win very, very well to really put Arsenal's chances of finishing second in the group under threat. So if Arsenal win tonight and Vålerenga don't beat Bayern Munich, which I think is very unlikely, Arsenal will qualify for the quarterfinals with 2 games to go. But their chances of finishing top of the group are perhaps, they're going to have to beat Bayern Munich. Well, they're going to have to overturn that head-to-head from 5-2 down. But I think the interesting thing tonight is what Juventus do, really, because I think what Arsenal are going to do under René Slegers is pretty set, to be honest with you. She hasn't changed the starting lineup too much. She hasn't changed the setup too much. But Juventus are a team that do change their setup according to the opposition. And so far in the Champions League, against both Bayern and Arsenal at home, they've gone with a back 3. And to be fair, it hasn't really worked for them. They lost both of those games. So insofar as their approach, which is an aggressive player-to-player marking kind of marking approach, it'll be interesting to see what they do with their formation tonight, whether they've decided that actually the back 3 hasn't worked so far and whether they go back to more what they usually play in Serie A, the kind of 4-2-3-1, and introduce 2 of their better players in Girelli and Bonansea, or whether they stick with this kind of 3 at the back and see if it works again. But ultimately, Arsenal in a strong position to qualify tonight, and really this is the end of a kind of second block. The players will have the weekend off, there'll be an international break, and I think if Arsenal finish with a good result tonight, any kind of win, then this is an incredibly successful block of games for René Slegers, and that will increase the calls, I think, for her to keep the job at least until the end of the season. So we're underway here at Emirates Stadium, or Arsenal Stadium as I'm supposed to call it on UEFA nights, for Arsenal v Juventus. Really interesting result in the other group game tonight. Bayern have drawn away at Vålerenga, which, if you want to wish cast into the future a bit, potentially gives Arsenal a chance to win the group, but they can't focus on that tonight. Beat Juventus, they're through to the quarterfinals. That's the bottom line, and they can think about the rest later. So it'll be really interesting to see whether Juve change anything. They haven't changed their formation for this game. They're still going with a back 3, largely kind of the same personnel-wise, but it'll be interesting to see whether they tweak anything in response to what happened last week when Arsenal beat them 4-0. So Arsenal v Juve, we're underway. So halfway through the first half here, Arsenal 0, Juventus 0. Not even sure there's been a shot in anger so far. Very much a game of cat and mouse, thrilling tactical battle, 2 fighters feeling each other out. Delete expression is appropriate, but I think what's really clear is that Juventus, although they're kind of playing the same system as last week with that back 3, they're much more conservative within that, so it looks much more like a back 5, and they're not nearly as aggressive in their kind of player-to-player marking. Essentially, I think Juventus have learnt some lessons from last week. They're sitting off a little bit more and looking to play on the counter, and I think Arsenal just kind of adjusting to that and feeling their way through it. Arsenal 0, Juventus 0. So half-time here, and it's Arsenal 0, Juventus 0, and I'm not that surprised by the shape of this game this week, because obviously Juventus, they've been quite aggressive in their player-to-player marking against Arsenal and Bayern, and frankly it hasn't worked. So they've been a lot more conservative in their shape, much more a back 5 than a back 3. They haven't been going player for player and being really aggressive again. They've sat off and tried to make it hard for Arsenal to break them down. They've certainly succeeded in doing that so far. Really only one chance, well, really only one shot in the half so far big chance for Frida Mornham, but really other than that, Arsenal kind of struggling to break Juventus down. But I do wonder what shape the second half's going to take, because Juventus do have to win this game. So I'll be interested to see how it evolves for them. Do they try and keep it tight and perhaps nick something off a set piece or a cross, or do they get a bit more adventurous in the second half? And I think that's really the thing to keep an eye on, as well as maybe some of the spaces Arsenal try to exploit. They did try a couple of things. They dropped Mariona a little bit deeper into the midfield with Kim Little and Leah Volti, to not much avail, it has to be said. So a little bit of cat and mouse here, which is probably a nice way of saying it's been a real stalemate. It's Arsenal 0, Juventus 0. So start of the second half here, no changes at half-time for Arsenal, certainly not in terms of personnel, but I'll be very interested to see whether they've tweaked anything positionally, whether they're just a bit more aggressive, a bit more intensive with their passing. And again, as I said at half-time, I'm really interested to see what Juve do here, because they've done a very good job of kind of holding Arsenal off, but they do have to win the game. So it'll be very interesting to me to see how they go about trying to do that. Arsenal 0, Juventus 0. So we're halfway through the second half, still Arsenal 0, Juventus 0. Temperature of the game rising a little bit. Arsenal have introduced Beth Mead and Stina Blackstenius from the bench. Beth Mead actually going over to the left wing and Mariona to the right. I'll be interested to see the reason for that and kind of what that brings. But Arsenal kind of cranking up the pressure here, but still 0-0. I just want to see who's got, I think it's Lina Hurtig.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It's an own goal, yeah, it is. So in the 89th minute, Arsenal take the lead. So Arsenal take the lead in the 89th minute, and it's Lina Hurtig scoring against her old club. And since she came on, she's really caused Juventus problems. Arsenal had a bit of a gap on the back post. They were putting some big crosses in, but no one really there on the back post to attack them. That's not Mariana's game. It's definitely Lina Hurtig's game. It's 3 crosses that have come in now where Hurtig's been really dominant, particularly in the air. She missed a chance she really should have scored with her head a few minutes ago. But this time, Stina Blackstenius puts the ball across goal. Lina Hurtig puts it in against her old club. Arsenal lead going into stoppage time. Words of the great George Allison, it's 1-0 to the Arsenal, and that's just the way we like it. Arsenal leaving it very late here. 89th minute winner from Lina Hurtig against her former club. But really, I think that narrative takes a real sideline to the fact that Lina Hurtig came on and scored the winner after a difficult couple of years at the club. But really, she made such a huge difference when she came on. She comes on in the 79th minute, 3 big chances, and to be fair, there's one header she really should score, but she makes amends for it. And I really felt in those last kind of 15 minutes or so, Juventus showed a susceptibility to high balls in the box. That's where all Arsenal's best chances came from, a couple from corners. And there was a little bit of a gap on the back post to attack, I felt. And Lina Hurtig's the perfect player to bring on in that scenario. And she attacks the back post 3 times, gets her reward at the 3rd time of asking, bundles the ball in the net from a low Stina Blackstenius cross. That is enough for Arsenal to win the game. And Arsenal had to be patient tonight because Juventus were much more conservative than they were last week in Italy. They really sat off. They never really came forward and tried to win the game. So Arsenal had to be very patient. Keep going, keep believing. They didn't create a lot for the first 70 minutes or so, but they started to crank the pressure up, and that Hurtig sub at the end is really what wins them the game. And it's a big moment for Lina Hurtig herself as well, after what's been a difficult 2.5 years at the club, to score against her former club and put Arsenal into the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And Arsenal now have a good chance to top the group. They play at Vålerenga away, they play Bayern Munich at home. If they win both of those, they top the group, so big opportunity there. But for tonight, they're through to the quarterfinals. Arsenal 1, Juventus 0.